When people think of Birmingham, they usually think of industry, factories, smoke and urbanisation. But long before any of that, there were homes like this. Today we're stepping inside Blakesley Hall, a Tudor house that stood here for over 400 years, quietly surviving while everything around it changed. And it tells a very different story of Birmingham's past. Hello, welcome to Through Lucy's Lens, weekly videos where I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you will find it interesting too. Today we have got a most request, finally. I am visiting the amazing Blakesley Hall here in Birmingham. And not only am I going to show you around Blakesley Hall, one of the oldest buildings in my hometown, beautiful Tudor building, I've also found out some little interesting extras which I'm excited to show you. So come along with me for a tour of the house. As you can hear, you won't believe how close we are to Birmingham city centre. It's so noisy, but here we are in this haven of peace. There we go, another car. I'm not even going to tell you how many times I've tried to do this intro. In fact, top secret, I'm not even at Blakesley Hall at the moment because every time I tried to do it, another car went past. So we've come to what I'll show you at the end of the video. So there you go, little hook. Anyway, enjoy. This is a place you've asked me to come over and over again. And you know what? It's flipping brilliant. You're going to enjoy it. Let's go. Welcome to Blakesley Hall. It was built in 1590 during the reign of Elizabeth I. At that time, Birmingham was not yet the industrial city we often picture. It was a much smaller place, a market town surrounded by farmland, woodland and scattered settlements. And houses like this would have been part of that landscape. This is a timber-framed house built using oak, with those distinctive dark beams and white panels that we associate so strongly with the Tudor period. And even from outside, you can tell this was not just purely a practical building. It was built to be seen. The house was built for Richard Smallbrook, a local merchant and gentleman farmer. Birmingham locals will recognise the name Smallbrook from Smallbrook Queensway, a busy and a little in-joke for us Brummies, highly avoidable if possible road that runs through the city centre today. He wasn't part of the aristocracy, but he was clearly doing well for himself, part of that growing group in late Tudor England who were building wealth through trade rather than inherited land. I usually refer to these people as the middling sort. So let's go inside and take a look around. And first we come into the Great Hall, and this was really the heart of the house. Everything centred around this space. Cooking, eating, socialising, daily life all happened here. And what I particularly love about Blakesley Hall is that what you see inside is based on a 17th century inventory. A long and detailed list of everything that was here when the last Smallbrook died. The long table in the Great Hall is an original piece of furniture recorded as being here in 1684, and that's incredibly rare. The whole household, including the servants, would have eaten together in this room. But even something as simple as cutlery reflected hierarchy in this time. Richard, the man of the house, would have used a pewter spoon. The women of the household, perhaps spoons made from cow horn, and the servants would have used spoons made from wood. By the late 1500s, we start to see more defined rooms in a house, more privacy and a separation between public and private life. Which brings us to the grand parlour. This wonderful room would have been where Richard Smallbrook hosted business meetings, entertained and showed face to the echelons of Birmingham society. Richard was a man of local importance to Birmingham, serving as a bailiff for a number of years. He was instrumental in the foundation of King Edward's School in New Street, and he also owned a shop on the High Street, dealing in ironware, spices and textiles. The women of the household would not have been welcome in this room when business was being discussed. The beautiful wall hangings remind us that life in this period was not as dark as we often think it was. The Tudors and Stuarts actually loved colour, sometimes decorations being quite garish for our modern tastes. And the hanging in this room, and note that it's not a tapestry, which would have been well beyond the means of the Smallbrooks, is based on the story of Joseph and his coat of many colours. Religion being such an intrinsic part of life that it was often used as the basis for home decoration, a constant reminder that there's something bigger than you. Next door is known as the small parlour, and this was a female space where the women would retire to continue gossiping or gambling if Richard wanted to talk business next door. This room is architecturally really interesting, as there was once a fireplace in here, but no one has ever been able to find out the location. During the 20th century, this room had actually been converted into a bathroom, making it more difficult to seek out original features. Upstairs are more wonderful rooms, not least this first bedroom known as the Painted Chamber. In 1941, during World War II, a bomb intended for the nearby Spitfire factory exploded nearby and caused extensive damage to Blakesley Hall. The hall was then closed for 16 years, but on reopening, it was discovered that the bomb had actually revealed rare and beautiful 16th century wall paintings. A very rare discovery, and again proof how highly decorated these homes were. It also revealed streaks of soot from burning candles on the timber. It's been carefully restored and was a real unexpected treat to see here. A real I can almost touch the past feeling. The paintings, not surprisingly for a bedchamber, represent fertility, and they must have worked as there was plenty of babies born here. Upstairs there's also a long gallery, and this is highly unusual for a home of this status. But it showed that Richard really wanted to show he was a man on the up. Rooms lead off the long gallery on the upper floor, but the gallery itself would have been used to take exercise, walking, or even entertaining and dancing. Richard had an office off this long gallery, positioned directly over the front of the house so he could always see who was approaching. There's also another bedroom called the far bedchamber, again containing fertility symbols such as pomegranates and lilies. A bed, like you see in this room, was one of the most expensive things you could own. Think of it today as a really top of the range car, not affordable to all, including me. A bed really showed off you could afford to rest. You could afford to be comfortable. Beds, however, were not private affairs like today. A whole family might use the same bed, with servants sleeping on a truckle bed that pulls out from beneath. There's also a servant's bedroom here. Now, this is an interpretation mainly to educate the children who visit. This room would have probably been in the attic or even in some places in the basement or stables. The servants may sleep here up to 5 people, and they slept around stored food, spices, salt or sugar, expensive commodities worthy of round-the-clock protection. The bed here is actually slightly raised from the ground. That's pretty lucky, because any visiting vermin would have gone underneath the bed rather than run across you as you slept. Because as grand as this house was, daily life here was relentlessly hard work, battling the weather, environment and the maladies of the human condition in a time before modern medicine. Back downstairs we have a wonderful kitchen, and I must say Birmingham museums always concentrate on kitchens and servants. Kudos, I love that. But this kitchen was an extension to the house. The kitchen dates from around 1650 and was a later addition to the original build. However, the kitchen ceiling beams have been dated by dendrochronology to 1350, making them nearly 700 years old. This also indicates that the beams were possibly used in a previous building which occupied this site before the kitchen was built. Recycling, as us historians know, is not a modern phenomenon. Down here in the working area of the house is also a buttery. Not actually as commonly interpreted a place to make butter, but contains a cider press. The cider and ale made here were stored in butts, hence the term buttery. Small beer and homemade cider would have been a staple drink throughout the day for everybody, including children. There's also a wonderful still room, a space where usually women would have used the herbs grown in the garden to produce medicines. Something that I've actually become really interested in lately myself, and this year I'm having a go at growing my own medieval herb garden to give some of these recipes a go. Of course, there'll be a video later in the year, if anything grows, of course. Wish me luck. Recipes would be passed down through the generations for stomach aches, gout, coughs, colds and infections. During the Stuart period, many women became increasingly accused of witchcraft. The rumour mill started by a forever suspicious James I for making such remedies. Outside, which you'll see later, is a lovely recreated herb garden, meticulously looked after by volunteers. There's also the bolting room. It's named as such because bolting is a type of sifting, and this is the room where dough was prepared before bread was baked in an outdoor oven, which would have been on the site. Bread was a staple food for rich and poor alike, and thousands of loaves would have been prepared and baked a year in a house like this. The Smallbrook family sold Blakesley Hall in 1685 to a family called Greswold. The house was then rented out to tenant farmers for the next 200 years. By the late 1800s, it had deteriorated, was restored and later became a private home again. People lived here into the early 20th century. But by this point, the house was not a desirable place to live, but a cold, draughty and dilapidated farmhouse. Blakesley Hall was purchased by Birmingham City Council in 1932, following the death of its previous owner, Thomas Merry. And from then on, they've nurtured the house, carrying out extensive repairs. It's been under threat of closure many times, but has survived, has raised out of the ashes, and I think is one of the jewels in Birmingham's crown. The house is still well visited by school children in Birmingham, and I'm sure many of you will have remembered your visit to Blakesley Hall when you were a child. But it still needs the support of everyone to make sure this beautiful and rare example survives another 400 years. A short walk away from Blakesley Hall is Yardley Old Village, a conservation area that brings the story together with another surprising pocket of Tudor and Stuart history in an otherwise busy and modern Birmingham suburb. Here you'll find the school building where the Smallbrook children perhaps attended, and the beautiful St Edburgh's church that hides another piece of fascinating Tudor history. The first reference to St Edburgh's was in 1187, and I always just let that sink in for a while. It's certainly worth a walk or a short drive here if you've made the visit to Blakesley Hall. So before I give you my little nugget of Tudor history that I was very excited about, this house reminds us that Birmingham didn't begin with industry. History isn't always somewhere grand, and sometimes it's right here under your nose in an unexplored place that sparks your imagination for weeks after you visit. Alright, so a little bit of a bonus at the end of the video, as I sometimes do. When I was in Blakesley Hall and I asked about the pomegranates, they said there is actually a connection to Katherine of Aragon nearby. So here is the tiny door that was built to celebrate the marriage of Katherine of Aragon and Arthur, Prince Arthur, Henry VII's first son, who tragically died, as we know, and then Katherine of Aragon went on to marry the one, the only, Henry VIII. But here is the door. How interesting. So we've got a pomegranate here for Katherine of Aragon, and we've got the Tudor rose here that, as we know, Henry VII produced to bring together the Yorks and the Lancasters to create the Tudor dynasty. And then we have the Tudor rose. Isn't it amazing? This is why I love history. You can just be having a day out and you find something as significant as this in your home city. So for any of the Tudor files out there like me that low-key love the old Tudor history, right here in Birmingham at a church in Yardley, Katherine of Aragon and Prince Arthur. Wasn't that wonderful? I'm so proud of this city I live in. You know, Birmingham has so much to offer. Now, Blakesley Hall at the moment, they're only open for, I think it's 2 days during the week. So look out for half terms if you work full time or you've got holidays, and pay a visit. It's fantastic. Not only is it still a magnificent resource where children can get their first taste of history, it's so beautifully done, and everybody there was so friendly and welcoming, and I was shocked how good it was, to be honest. So thank you for pressuring me to keep going. I know for some of you watching it holds really special memories. People have got married there, people remember taking their own children, so I hope you enjoyed a little trip down memory lane if that's what you remember of Blakesley Hall. And for everyone else, give it a visit. It's fantastic. And I always love coming to Birmingham. Just, you know, half an hour drive, no stress. And I'm going to end the video here. But before I do, as always, you know, like, subscribe, all that stuff that I don't like asking because it's embarrassing, but it's necessary for the channel. And I do appreciate every single one of you that engages, likes and subscribes, because we continue growing and it's so exciting. Yeah. Give it a subscribe, really appreciate it. Anyway, enough of that. It's already starting to get dark, so we're gonna head home to the warm, because probably see it is really cold still, even though we're at the beginning of March. Thank you for your support. I'll see you all on the next one. Goodbye. Say hi to everyone, Roops. No, it's all about the stick. New area, new place to sniff. Come on, Bubba.